Hello and welcome to our 2020 WebCenter Half Marathon as we've been following along the 12-week action plan. Can't believe it, we're already on week 5. We're almost halfway through the marathon, so we're kind of sprinting to the finish here. But this week is a really important topic. You may have heard the term or the phrase, the fortune is in the follow-up. Well, today is going to be all about following up. Some tips on following up, some stats on following up, why it's important to follow up, how to follow up, what to do when you follow up. And we've got no one better to handle this topic than our very own certified Web Center trainer out of the Bay Area of California. He's joining us to cover today's topic, all about following up for week 5. Please help me welcome, and I'm going to turn it over to our certified trainer, Stephen Tang. All yours, Stephen.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate this opportunity. Hi, everyone in the UK. Again, as Jason mentioned, my name is Stephen Tang, and I'm very excited to share some of my experiences and what I've been able to do to successfully follow up with my clients. Just for some of those that don't know me, I live in the Bay Area. I have been in the technology consulting and sales space for a very long time. Over my career, I've worked at many companies. I even co-founded my own technology consulting company, as well as worked for a full service digital agency here in the Bay Area, building websites and doing digital marketing for the likes of, Fortune 500 companies. And so I'm very excited to talk to you today about follow-up, because so far through, up to, week 5 now, week 6, we've been, setting your goals. You've been, building your qualified list. You've started to sort of build momentum and started the outreach, right? Last week, Jason gave you some really good, word tracks on, call scripts and whatnot. So hopefully you've been testing that out and kind of seeing what results, what works and what doesn't work for you. And so here we are, right? The follow-up. And whether it's following up on a voicemail, whether it's following up on a demo presentation, whether it's following up for a 15-minute consultation or whatnot, there's things that you want to do to be able to effectively follow up. So we're going to talk about those things today here. So of course, having a clear follow-up strategy is going to be very important. If you're going to want to close the sales and make more money, you're going to have a strategy in place. So we're going to talk about that today. But just kind of reflecting on some interesting statistics here that we found, right? As you can see, the little green pie here, right? 2% of sales are made on the first contact, right? And these are sort of your very rare scenarios, right? Where you just came in at the right place at the right time. The person was looking for a website or digital marketing, and you're like, yep, all right, let's do it, right? Those are kind of rare. As you kind of move along in the pie, 3% of sales are made on the second contact, meaning, you made the first phone call, you booked an appointment, and yep, they're ready to go on the second call, right? Those are also pretty rare, about 3%, right? 3 out of 100, deals that you go through. And then as you make more contacts, you can notice that your odds increase. And this is the wonderful thing about follow-up, right? It's because a lot of us don't feel like we're salespeople, myself included, having been in sales for so long. But it's interesting because the follow-up is the one thing that you can control that doesn't require a lot of skills, right? It's almost like the participation award, right? As long as you participate, you get that award. Similar thing here with the follow-up. As long as you do it, the odds are in your favor. You notice on the big blue chart pie, right? 80% of sales are made on the 5th to 12th contact, right? And when I think about contact, I'm not just thinking about, oh, I left a voicemail or second voicemail or third voicemail, fourth voicemail. Those are great, right? For good salespeople to consider those as contacts. But today, I want to propose you to be great, right? And for me, the standard I hold myself to is how many touches or how many interactions do I have that lead to a successful follow-up. And that's, being able to get a hold of someone on the phone, or, when you shoot an email and they actually respond, I count that as a contact. So depending on where you are and how, how high of a standard you want to hold yourself to, that can sort of determine, the success rate of your follow-up too. But just know that, follow-up is all about effort, right? It's all about doing it. And the good news is anybody and everybody can do follow-ups, right? Taking another look at some of the statistics here, right? It's very interesting that 12% of sales people don't make more than 3 contacts, right? 25% of salespeople stop on the second contact, right? And in the previous slide, notice how 80% of sales are made between 5 to 12 contacts. Well, you've left a lot of money on the table just by not following up. And so you definitely don't want to be in the blue statistic here where 48% of salespeople never follow up, right? And that's pretty alarming, right? To me as a salesperson, that's actually, nice because I know my competitors aren't doing as much. So as long as I put in the effort, as long as I stay on top of mind, as long as keep following up and be persistent, I know that eventually I'll beat on my competition. So those are ways that we can all, be successful in a web center business just by following up. So that's really good news for all of us today. So there's a lot of ways I talked about earlier in each step of the process, right? The sales process from your first touch, your first interaction, all the way through the 15-minute consultation, all the way through the presentation, the demo, and then follow up to close, right? There's a lot of ways that you'll be following up. One of the ways is that our product specialist will also help you follow up too, especially after a demo, right? After a web center demo or a digital marketing demo, the product specialist will offer to follow up for you. The important thing here is that you communicate well with the product specialist what and how you want to follow up, right? A lot of times for me and my product specialist, Anthony and Siku, I always talk to them about pricing and say, hey, they might not close today, and if they don't, I'd love for you to kind of follow up this with this and this, or make sure pricing. I'd love to work with my clients on that. All these things, right? You want to communicate well with your product specialist. Why? So that you're both on the same page, right? You don't want to be able, in a scenario where you try to follow up and the product specialist is all following up, and you get the client confused, like, so what's going on? Who am I supposed to talk to, right? So it's very important to be able to be on the same page with your product specialist and be sort of one united front, so to speak, right? So that's really key there. However, you also have the opportunity to follow up yourself, right? And the important thing for you is definitely to stay organized, right? I know myself when I have 5 or 6 or 7 appointments and all in different stages of the sales process, I need to be organized and I need to know, hey, if I promise someone I'm going to follow up by Friday, I need to do that, right? So it's important for you to stay focused and stay organized. Depending on the candidate and the industry and the type of work that they do, there's going to be certain times that are more favorable and certain times that are not. For example, if you're talking to a restaurant owner, guess what? You probably don't want to call around noon. You probably don't want to call around dinner time, 5 or 6 o'clock, right? Depending on when dinner time is in the UK. I like to eat around 5 or 6, so that's my dinner time. But depending on who you're talking to, you want to be strategic about that so that it increases your odds of being able to get a hold of that person too. I know in the construction industry, some of the contractors I worked with in the past, trying to get a hold of them between the hours of 9 to 12 or even during the day is super hard. Why? It's because they're working, they're on the job, right? They're on the go. But if you get up super early, say 6:30 a.m. or 7 a.m., chances of getting them on the phone a little bit higher, right? Because why? They're just getting their day started. In fact, they're probably at your local hardware store. For us in the States, a Home Depot or a Lowe's, right? Getting materials for that day, right? So chances are they're probably going to be able to pick up your phone. So the key here is know your clients and know your candidates, what industry they're in, and the busy times, and try to avoid them, right? And schedule in time for yourself to call. So little things that you can do to increase your chances of getting a hold of your prospect, right? And of course, I always like to say, be persistent, but don't be pushy, right? This is where the more you do it, the more relationship you build with your candidate, your prospect, the more you get a feel of how they like to work, right? If you call them too many times and you kind of get a sense that they're a little bit turned off, then maybe you want to pull back a little bit. But there's also something to note, that it's important to also be assertive. Something I learned early on, and being Asian myself, I come from a culture that we're very respectful, right? We're very, respectful of people's time, and the elders, and we're very respectful in that sense. So when I started my sales career, my manager immediately noticed that and said, "Steve, I noticed that you're very polite, you're very kind, right?" And I go, "Gee, thanks, my mom would be proud." But he told me one thing. He says, "However, that may not work in your favor some of the times in sales." And I took that to heart, right? What he meant by that was to say, certain times you're going to need to push your client a little bit. That's not to say that you're being pushy, right? Sometimes your client just needs a little nudge, a little reminder, right? Because they're busy themselves. So if you buy your client's excuse and say, "Oh, I'm super busy. This is my super busy season," right? Follow with me in 2, 3 weeks. If you buy their excuse, then you might not be able to close the sale, as often as you would like. On the other hand, right, being respectful is great, and that's important, but also know when to be politely, encouraging, right? And say, "Hey, I know your busy season is coming up. However, I know 80, 90% of your sales is made in this quarter. So I'd love to work with you to get more traffic to your website so that you can increase your sales. How does that sound?" Right? So a little bit sense of urgency, right? We want to create. And that's not pushy at all. In fact, that is being consultative. That is actually being helpful to your clients. So respect their time, and more importantly, know what to follow up on. Because the last thing you want to do is to follow up and just be, "Hey, it's me again. Hi, how's it going?" Right? You want to add value on every follow up that you do, so that you're not just that guy that, "Oh, I don't want to pick up his call," or, "Oh, he's just going to take up another 30 minutes of my time," right? You don't want to be that guy. But if you come across an article you read online or something you're researching for your client, and you say, "Hey, I saw this and thought of you." Wow, that's great. That's value, right? On our 15-minute consultation, you talked about how difficult it was for getting leads, or for your website to get traction, or traffic to your website. Well, here's an article that can help you with SEO, right? I'd love to talk to you more. Let's chat, right? You're adding value in every step of the way. And so that's what's going to differentiate you from being a average salesperson, right? Following up, versus a sales professional that knows what your client needs are and knows how to follow up with them appropriately. So there's a ton of information out there, that's a lot of shareable content, right? Whether it's on social media, on blogs that you can find. In fact, our own blog, MAWC 411 blog, right? I actually get a lot of resources from that to hand out. We have a YouTube channel with our official MA Web Center. And so I get some videos there that I also send out to my clients. On MCW401.com, we also have a lot of resources that we can download to send to our clients as well, in terms of follow-up pieces. So there's a lot of content out there that I highly encourage you to get to know what we have, so that you know how to follow up with your clients. Again, some of the resources we have: the marketing manual, the services catalog, the features and benefits guide is my best friend. I love this piece. In fact, I lead with this piece every time I'm on a 15-minute consultation, or even an appointment, right? And especially talking to affiliate partners, I lead with this piece. Why? Because it does a really good job, very, very nicely laid out, very professional looking PDF pamphlet that I can immediately send out to my prospects right after the call. So I really love this piece, and it does a really good job outlining all our different services. So even if my client is only interested in digital marketing, well, I have design center in there, right? So that could be something that might pique their interest once they review it, right, for them. So a lot of pieces there. Content ideas, right? You can talk about news that is coming up, the climate of the website industry, the what's going on in their industry and how it relates to digital marketing. You can do specials, you can do client referrals and testimonials and whatnot, campaigns. There's a lot of different ideas out there. And so if you do get a chance, do we have Definitely kind of circulate, some ideas that you've been using that's successful here as well that you can share. Also on our Facebook group, a Facebook support group that you can share some ideas there as well. Love to learn from one another. But a lot of times, again, it's all about edifying our team of professionals, right? Edifying our team so that we can continually set ourselves apart and be able to close more deals and more follow-up. Again, I talked about some videos that you can share. You can definitely look them up on a YouTube channel, on our Facebook, and again, a lot of resources here that are helpful that you can continually add value, right? That's the key, is to add value to your prospects and who you're talking to, so that you're not just a salesperson, right? So remember that. And the key, I guess, I also want to point out here is all these tools are great. They're all available for you. In fact, we have so many resources. At the end of the day, it is useless without you, right? You do have to take the effort. You do have to, get to know them, these resources, what they are, and read it yourself before you send it, right? Because the last thing you want is to send something and the client comes back to you with a question. You're like, oh, whoops, let me find out, right? So that's important, right? These, again, reminder are pieces that I use to create a conversation, to be able to start up a conversation or create an interest, right? So keep that in mind, because a lot of times they're gonna be there to help you create an opportunity, not to necessarily close the deal per se, right? So it's important to know, what pieces to find, how to follow up, in order for you to be effective. Um, and so as you keep that in mind, your prospects, are definitely going to have questions. So those are important for you to, take note and, bring it to the right team of people that can come back to help, right? And we've got a lot of them. So some basics for following up, right? The key here is, we always like to say, be proactive, right? Get things in front of your client even before they ask, right? That's the hallmark or characteristic of a good salesperson, right? That's able to do that. When you set quality appointments, when you do the 15-minute consultations, every step along the way, I always like to more or less foreshadow what's coming up, right? And let them know, hey, after this call, I'm going to send you a follow-up email, a recap email, a summary email, right? So that way everything is lined out, right? Everything is outlined. And I also like to put the next steps in those emails, right? I actually outline that. So I say, all right, the next steps is we need to schedule a 15, no, a WebCenter demo, and you're going to need to be in front of your computer. You're going to need to, download GoToMeeting just in case. And my product specialist will give you a 9-digit GoToMeeting ID number on that call when we call you, right? So things that I, prepare my clients ahead of time so that they know what to expect. And one thing that I also know to remind them is, you're going to get quite a few notifications. They're automatic, so I hope you don't mind, right? I actually had one client tell me, oh, too many emails, too many emails. So I said, apologize for that. But, when you set the expectation early, often, you're going to be able to diffuse a lot of their questions, a lot of these challenges, right? So that's definitely very key. And of course, staying organized, like I mentioned earlier. In terms of, to be specific, right? You also want to know where you are in the process in relation to the follow-up. Again, I talked about the next steps. What is your responsibility as, the Web Center owner, but also the client also has their responsibility too, right? When they purchase a design package, it's their responsibility, to be able to fill out the design wizard with you, or provide you information, whether it's content and copy to go on the website. So they do have a little bit of homework too. So you want to be able to follow up and help out the design center process along the way in that sense, right? In that scenario. Another key here is also to understand, who's handling the follow-up. Earlier I mentioned, the product specialist is able to help you to follow up, but it's also important for you to recognize, who's going to take the lead, right? If it's going to be the product specialist, then how can you support the product specialist? If it's going to be you, then you want to be on the same page with the product specialist too. And the last tip of key here and advice is to create a sense of urgency, right? The way that I do that is I always like to ask, during my presentations, my appointments, 15-minute consultation, or even at the website demo is, when are you looking to, number one, select your vendor? What is your timeline, right? When are you looking to select your vendor? And number two, when are you looking to launch your website? If my prospect tells me, hey, I'm looking to launch my website in 1 month, then I know that if my design center probably takes about, 4 to 6 weeks, right? Then I'm behind, right? I'm going to need to get started today, right? Create that sense of urgency. If they say, oh, I want to get my website up and running in 3 months, sure, we have a little bit of wiggle room. But then I'll say, you know what, in order for me to, meet that deadline, we're going to have to work backwards and say, right, we're going to need to get a website demo this week so that we have enough time to put a proposal together for you so that we can review it together so that we can go over questions. And it probably takes about 4 to 8 weeks depending on your schedule and whatnot. So I kind of estimated that out, right? And build a timeline for them so that we can create that sense of urgency. And that's also one of the ways that I've been very successful in following up, right? Because with the timeline, it's a timeline that my client, my prospect gave me. It's not my timeline. So now my job is to keep them accountable, right? Mr. Prospect, you said you wanted to get your website up and running in 1 month. Well, if that were the case, we're going to need this and this and this, by today or tomorrow, right? We're going to need that by next week, and we're going to need, this by, following week. And so that way, you're being a great account manager slash project manager, right? You're the one controlling the process, and you're the one in charge, right? So that's the key here. Some basics there, and maybe I gave you a little bit of advanced tips there too. um, and again, supporting your clients in every step of the way is your role, right? We don't necessarily want to take on the job of a project manager. If you went with a design package, that's, we have a dedicated project manager that will handle that. But for you, it's all about keeping in touch with your clients. Say, hey, how's it going? How are things moving along? How do you like working with the product specialist so far? Or how do you like working with your project manager so far? Is there anything I can help and provide assistance with? Right. Those are great ways for you to keep in touch, right? And stay in touch with your client throughout the process, throughout the project, throughout the sales process, right? And I always like to ask, what are some information that you would like to see that I can provide you, right? A quick sort of a question I always like to ask if some of you are having trouble, getting hold of someone or knowing how to follow up. Write this down, right? Here's a quick question I like to ask, So, Mr. Prospect, just out of curiosity, how do I stay on top of mind without being annoying? Right? How do I stay on top of mind without being annoying? And I also like to follow up with a second question and say, hey, Mr. Prospect, if I come across some information that I think is relevant to you, would that be okay? Do I have your permission to send it to you? Right? Asking these questions, at the end of your 15-minute consultation or at the end of your website presentation or digital marketing walkthrough demo, that really helps me to follow up without feeling like I'm being a pest, right? Because the last thing I want to feel like is, oh, I'm just annoying him, or I'm just, it's another follow up, or I'm I'm taking a lot of my client's time, right? So by asking those two questions, it really helps you to follow up and sort of getting their permission to allow you to follow up. And a lot of times, once I ask that question, they'll say, yeah, sure, great, go for it. Or they'll tell me, you know what, I'm going to be busy the next 2 weeks, don't even bother, but 2 weeks after, feel free. Then I know also that if I'm following within the 2 weeks, if I didn't ask that question and I just follow within the 2 weeks, then, I might be discouraged because like, oh, I'm not getting through, I'm not getting, hold of that person. But if I ask that question, I know that I'm supposed to follow up, 2 weeks after he'll have more time, right? So that helps you to kind of set expectations appropriately. I always like to also stay in contact with thank you cards, right? Whether it's a thank you email or some cards that I purchased. I don't know if you can see, right? Some cards. In fact, Thanksgiving is coming around the corner, so I've got some Thanksgiving cards, and then Christmas is around the corner, so I already have my Christmas cards purchased, right? If you have a shop.com account, obviously get some IBV points, but stay engaged, right? It's very important, right? Because nowadays, how many people out there actually still handwrite notes, right? Not very much. So any way that you can set yourself apart and be different, your clients are going to appreciate that. And that's going to be key, right? Again, at the end of the day, relationship building, and that's what we want to do, right? So again, right, I kind of covered this earlier. Professional gratitude, right? Was it an email, phone call, a shop.com gift card after, after you close the sale, or your client's 1 year anniversary with you, right? Those are nice gifts. And say, thanks for being with me for 5 years. I really appreciate your business. Here's an OPC bottle, right? Or here's, a little gift. Handwritten notes definitely go a long way. And if you, want to know what to write, there's a lot of things that you can Google to write, thank you notes and what to write to sound professional and whatnot. Again, you can always say, hey, our team of product specialists and, WebCenter solutions appreciate you, and so forth. So those are great notes to use to stay in touch. So as a WebCenter owner, again, right, know what resources you have, right? You have a team of sales professionals, our product specialists. You have a team, the design center team. We have our technical support and our billing team. So any point in time, for you to be a good quote unquote account manager, you'll want to know who to connect with for your client whenever there's a question or issue that comes up, right? So your role here is keep in mind to connect the right people with the right challenges or issues that need to be addressed. And so as you use the different forms of communication here, whether it's a voicemail or email, or a personal visit, right? You want to make sure that you're very clear on your role, right? You don't want to be necessarily known as the person that solves the issues. You want to be known as the person that connects your clients to the right people within the team of specialists that you have, so that you continually become the account manager. And sometimes that can work in your favor too. You can play good cop bad cop scenarios, right, depending on the situation. But then at the end of the day, you want to be a resource to your clients. And the more that you can be of value to your client, the more that your clients will come to you for more help and see you as more resourceful, right? So that's going to be key for you there. Um, I know this is going to be something that comes up as you have a lot of clients and as you, in sales in general, right? This is going to be inevitable. There's going to be challenges. So again, going back to my slide earlier, who can you connect them with the right people? If it's a billing question, reach out to our billing team and connect your client with the billing question department there. If it's an e-commerce question, get our tech support, involved right away, right? And that's key. For me, I always like to use the feel felt found, right? So I want to empathize with my client and situation and say, please apologize. That's very uncharacteristic of who we are and what we do. But I'd love to help you resolve this issue, right? Or I'd love to help you, get the need the help that you need, or get the right people in front of you. So my role, right? I always want to hear them out. I always want to hear, and sort of sympathize with them, empathize, and tell them, what, I really apologize for your experience in this area. Let me help make it right, or let me help, you get the right resources, or let me help you connect with the right people, right? And of course, definitely if it needs to be escalated, Jason and our team are fantastic. They're very responsive, and they're more than happy to hop on calls with you and your client too. And I've worked with, some managers in our WebCenter division. So they're really fantastic, really great people that are very responsive. And at the end of the day, right, we want to create win-win scenarios. So that's one thing. On the other hand, just also note that sometimes your clients may not be right all the time. And so in those situations, we don't want to say, you're wrong, right? Even though they are. We want to be able to be polite about that. We also want to be able to manage those situations well. And so our product specialists and our design team, I always defend them 100% of the time in front of my clients, right? 100%. There's no doubt in my mind, right? Because they're my team and I take full responsibility for them. And so for me, I always like to say, what, that's very uncharacteristic of my team, and I really apologize that, but I know that they try their best, and they always want to be professional in everything that they do, right? If it's depending on the situation scenario. So so the key here is, when a challenge does come up, which know that it does come up, passing it along to the right people within our team. You definitely need to do it via email or in writing. And so the email address that we have is help@mawebcenters.com. That's going to be one of your resources the email, or you can reach out to Jason directly. Sorry, Jason, I'm going to give you a lot more emails there, and maybe reach out to one of us, trainers too. We can potentially help direct you as well if you don't know, if you're newer to the Web Center division. So the key though is to communicate often, communicate transparently, and make sure you communicate well and effectively so that we eliminate these challenges, right? And setting the right expectations up front is also very important. So kind of wrapping up a little bit now, tools to stay organized. What tools do we have? Well, in the 12-week action plan, if you downloaded it and printed this out, in it there's a little chart here that you can create so that you can stay organized to follow up with your clients. I'm going to show you my example. Right. So this is out of Google Docs, right? I created this sheet. This is a sample, but I have one of my own. And again, it's very similar to the sheet that we have in the 12-week action plan. What it does is I list my client, my prospect, the business. I list out the type, whether it's a website client or a digital marketing client. And then I put the status here, right? Did I contact this person? Was it a no appointment? Status 2, a no show, or I have an appointment, but what's the next steps? I added a couple extra things here, just so for me personally, I want to keep in mind, so I know how to follow up appropriately, right? I put some notes here. I put, what follow up pieces are next. Is it a phone call? Is it, send a proposal, right? Is it an email follow up recap, or just a check-in, or is it for Integrity Mobile, right? I sent a blog over to them, right? So I want to keep track of what pieces I send to my clients and my prospects so that I know not to repeat myself, right? So that's important. Another reason why it's important to stay organized. And then I also like to put the expected dollar value amount there so that I know where to spend my time. And most important, I always want to know the time frame, right? The timeline. When am I targeting to close this? If the client's looking to close this month, a little more sense of urgency for me to follow up and keep track of them. If it's going to be closing in next month, then I might not focus on them too much this month, right? At the bottom here, you see my 30, 60, 90 days, right? I want to be able to know in this quarter or the next 30, 60, 90 days, what is coming up for me, what's important for me to follow up and keep track of. So anything within the month of November is my 30 days, right? Within the next 30 days, I want to close in this month. And then in December, anything 60 days out, right? That's going to be in my 60-day tab. And then 90 days, right? In January, right? What's going to be in January is going to go into that tab, right? And I put them in terms of follow-up based on what my client tells me is their target time frame, right? So, some things that help me to be organized and stay, successful. And so hopefully these are also a little bit of tips and tricks that you can also implement too. And another tool that I use is my calendar, right? This is a sample calendar. I'm showing you sort of what I do to block off the times throughout my entire week, because I learned from my mentor, Twen, if it's not scheduled, it's not going to happen, right? If it's, not, written in your calendar, it's probably not going to come to fruition. So for me, an example, right? These are all my appointment blocks and my prospecting blocks, and you can see Friday is my follow-up day, right? And so it's very important for you to know when to put, your follow-up times, right? I have, one again on Wednesday, kind of, scattered throughout. But, definitely block off time so that you know when your follow-up time is. And so you can continue to stay organized. So, having a calendar like this is super helpful. So in terms of the weekly exercise to sort of wrap up today's call, if you haven't done so already, I highly encourage you to look at all the activity that you've done. Right, we're pretty much already halfway into our marathon, but since week 1, right, you maybe, if you've done this, great, but if you haven't, create a Google sheet, right, or a Excel sheet, and just write out everybody's name, or even pen and pad, notepad. Write out every prospect that you have that you've reached out to, the type of prospect, the appointments booked, when it was booked, what type of appointment, right, and the follow up in the next steps. And so hopefully this will help you to start to stay organized. And it's not easy to do in the beginning. It does take a little bit of discipline. It does take a little bit of habit. But once you've got this habit down, I promise you, you will be able to close more deals, and you'll remember to follow up on more appointments, so that increases your bottom line as well. So with that, I want to appreciate, thank you everyone's time today. I hope what I went through today was informative and helpful for you. And of course, if you have any questions, definitely reach out to us. We're more than happy to help assist you. But yeah, with that, I'm going to turn over back to Jason.